Okay, we're all settled in our places. Time to look forward to the author. Welcome, Lata.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you so much for coming over on a day where many people have been scared to step out of home. But I'm sure the journey to this place was a smooth ride, very unlike in Bombay. Well, writing this book has been an incredible journey for me, a huge learning experience, and an experience that has taken me to lots of new people in my life and a lot of new experiences. I have been writing a lot of articles in all these years as a journalist, and I would have written about 1,000 articles, but writing a full-fledged novel was a huge challenge for me. My background in psychology and rational emotive behavior therapy has helped me a lot, and there's a lot of that stuff in this book. Well, I'd just like you to pick up the book and read it yourself, because it is a psychological thriller, so speaking a lot about it would be giving away a lot. So do read a copy and enjoy reading it, please.
Thank you very much. Our pleasure. Let's hear it from Tom Alter this evening. Of course, been very generous with his time, packed with a hectic schedule. He's been traveling across the country, but has certainly kept to being with us this evening to share his time alongside the launch of the book. Thanks so much, Tom Alter.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here. And when I was presented this book to read, the title was extremely intriguing, Incognito. And being a person who's slightly in the public eye, sometimes I wish to be incognito, and I wish there were ways that it could be done. But having read this, I realized that being incognito has got many forms to it. And sometimes when you think you're incognito, in fact, you're exposing your true self to the world. And that's the mystery of this book. And once you start reading this book, to say you're hooked is a very mundane way to say it, but you realize that in this book, in which Lata is writing about a woman, you realize that that person could be you also. And that's why I think the sign of great literature or great film or great art is how you personally connect to that work of art. So as you begin reading Incognito, you realize that she could be writing about you, and that's the magic of the book.
Thank you very much, Tom. And of course, the lady who is going to certainly sizzle you with her presence, Sathya Saran, thank you so much for joining us, because she has been a lady who has championed the cause of women all across the country and have kept the ladies on their toes, leading from the front, many houses, many corporate worlds. And here she is with us with a valuable time. Thank you so much, Sathya.
Well, I've just come from a workshop that I've held on writing, and I told all those who attended that you have to give what the audience wants. So I'm going to ask the audience, should I make a boring speech or should I tell you who is the murderer? Well, I'll do neither, but I will say that I enjoyed reading the book, and I did read it before I agreed to do the foreword. And it is fascinating, and it's wonderful that the murder has a psychological twist to it, and it's well backed by expertise and knowledge. Also the fact that all the women in the stories are women in their own rights, and that makes me very happy, because there's that streak of quiet feminism in the book which I completely agree with. So congratulations, Lata, and I know you gave me 10 minutes, but I'm not much of a talker, so all the best. And I do encourage you to read the book.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sathya.
I'm sorry to break in. If there's any way of the gentlemen with the cameras, if you all could be at the back, because it's very unfair that half the people... The confession. Age? The man behind the desk asked without looking up.
75.
He now looked up at her, his pen poised mid-air. A still and awkward moment passed.
Haven't you ever seen a 75-year-old woman? First, you make me wait for almost half an hour, and then you take your own sweet time to fill out a simple form.
I'm sorry, ma'am. His desk was a mess. She could never imagine herself working in such clutter.
I'm sure he spends half his working life just searching.
She swept a glance across the desk. Her mind went into overdrive. Well, All that he had to do was to stack all those papers in a neat pile on the left side of the desk and bunch the files on the right. The two phones could well get into the niche between the two piles. That would even leave some space for a nice little vase. She decided to bring him some orchids in a good vase on her next visit. "Please wait." He picked up the phone and announced into it, "Anjali, please come," he said, getting up from his chair and leading her into an inner room. "Please sit." The man sitting inside pointed to the chair across his desk. He was smiling. Anjali slowly shut the door behind her and cautiously walked towards the desk. She studied him as she moved towards the chair offered by him. His bald head framed a face dominated by chubby and rosy cheeks. Round steel-rimmed glasses complemented his circular features. His broad smile was the only linear line across his face.
If they make a movie on Winston Churchill, this man would fit the bill for the lead actor. Hello?
Hello, Anjali. What brings you here?
I have a confession to make.
Her tongue froze, stuck to the roof of her mouth. She opened her mouth a couple of times, but no sound emerged. He pushed a glass of water towards her.
Thank you.
He sat patiently, watching, smiling.
Murder. 4 of them. But I didn't kill them. But I know who killed them.
Oh?
They did it. I feel guilty because I know they did it.
Who are they?
They are people very close to me. Shaili, Rachna, Anuradha and Shakti.
How well do you know them?
Very, very well.
Would you like to tell me about them?
I want to tell you everything.
Well, Anjali, where would you like to start?
Shall I tell it to you the way they told me?
That's a good idea.
Thank you, Doctor.
Part 2. Shaili. Venice. Suddenly I felt a shiver down my spine. Oh no, it was that feeling again, that cold feeling. My head was spinning. I held my head between my hands. The image of the red book lying on the gondola seat seized my head. That red book I should have told him about. This was not the first time. In the past few days, this kept happening to me. The book shadowed me all the time. I was tortured. I was tormented. I moved away from the door. I sat on the bed and took a few deep breaths. 5 minutes later, I felt better. I went into the bathroom, undressed, and stood under the shower. After a long, slow, hot shower, I slid under the warmth of the blanket and slowly drifted into sound sleep. First, it was a faint muffle. Then I heard the voices. "Quick! Everyone out of the rooms!" called out the voices. This was followed by the sound of pounding on the doors. I jumped out of bed, hurried to the window, and peered out into the dark. First I could not see it, and then I froze. Water everywhere. The Charlie or narrow lanes leading to my hotel were flooded. Oh, the Acqua Alta, I realized, panic-stricken. Acqua Alta is high waters in Italian. It is the exceptional tide peaks that occur periodically in the northern Adriatic Sea. The phenomenon occurs mainly due to astronomical tides. The seawater comes into the canals during high tide. I looked up at the surrounding buildings. Terrified white faces were peering from the windows like ghosts. Lightning was tearing the skies apart with its silvery veins. The sky growled angrily. I shuddered. I swiftly reached for the phone on the bedside table and with shaking fingers dialed Vikram's room number. The phone rang for a complete minute. "Oh, pick up the phone, Vikram," I pleaded aloud. There was no response. I panicked. Where was Vikram? I flung the phone down, then I picked it up again to call the tour guide's room. The phone was dead. I cursed. The sky revolted in a loud roar, and instantly the room plunged into darkness. I was terrified. I could barely move. I knew I had to do something. I cautiously groped my way to the door. My fingers were so unsteady that I could hardly turn the knob. Finally, I managed to pull the door open. I was sobbing loudly now. Water was filling into the corridor. I started screaming for help. I groped my way along the wall. Vikram, Vikram, I was screaming now. Suddenly, I remembered that there was a huge window at the end of the corridor. Vikram and I had stood there a couple of nights ago, hand in hand, as we looked up at the moon. If only I could reach that window, I could call out for help, I thought. I groped along the wall and waded through the water. After what seemed like ages, my fingers felt the window ledge. I frantically groped around for the window. It was ajar with both my hands. I pushed it open. Just then the lights came on. I turned around and looked behind me down the corridor. There was no one, only water. I was scared. I turned and looked out of the window. The moon lit up the world outside. I could clearly see the silhouettes of the buildings. They were floating on water. I raised myself on my toes, leaned farther and peered below the window. First I didn't see it clearly. Then I saw the silvery outline of a gondola making its way under the arch that led out of our hotel. The gondola was hardly a few meters away. And then I saw him. I gasped. The gondolier, it was him, the same guy whose gondola we had ridden to the Bridge of Sighs a few days ago. I waved out to him frantically. The gondolier was laughing out loud and saying something to someone sitting in the gondola. I couldn't see who it was. He had his back to me. I waved out to the gondolier. Once again, the man seated there slowly turned his head. I was aghast. It was Vikram. But this was definitely not the Vikram I knew, because this one had a sinister smile. Vikram, I called out in an unsure voice. Vikram, I sobbed, help me. Vikram was waving something at me. I strained my eyes to see it. It was his red book. The book that had been haunting me, the book that I had not told him about. He turned towards me and said, no, I will not help you. You deserve to suffer. Vikram's voice was menacingly low. Hey, wake up, Vikram's voice coaxed. Of course I'm wide awake, I can see everything clearly, I replied without any feeling in my voice and hung up. I went through the morning like a robot, but my mind was racing. I was hurting deep down in my heart. I showered thrice. Would have taken another one had it not been for the ringing phone. It crashed into my thoughts and scattered them as smithereens around my feet on the wet bathroom floor. I slowly picked up my thoughts and carefully strung them into a series of actions that I would take.
That's when I decided to kill Vikram.
Part 3. Rachna, Pondicherry. On the dot of the hour, the marathon was flagged off. 1,000 runners amidst deafening cheers took off, leaving behind a cloud of red dust. The Oroville Marathon route is so unlike any city marathon route. It winds through the thick green cover of Oroville. No tar roads, there are only red mud tracks that wind their way through the forest. In fact, the surface changes all the time. The early morning sun rays played hide and seek through the tree branches. Bird calls provided the soundtrack to our running spirits. The sweet fragrance of eucalyptus hung in the air. Dry leaves and flowers floated down gently from the trees. But none of this paradise could lift my sinking spirit. Since the start, we were running together, maintaining the same pace. Rohit was in the center, I was to his left. I always ran on his left side, and Mayuri was to his right. Minutes before the start, Rohit had drawn me close and hugged me. Good luck, he had whispered. He then turned towards Mayuri and their hands had met in a high five. I hated the fact that I was sharing Rohit with Mayuri on such a memorable occasion in my life. I had this lousy feeling that my dream of running this marathon with my dearest Rohit was slowly but steadily coming apart threadbare. I felt a lump in my throat. my pace slackened. I realized I was tiring too soon, although we had run for barely an hour. When we came out onto a clearing along the route, I was exhausted.